Hello, everyone. Welcome to HubSpot Setup Secrets, What Pros Do First. I'm Casey, and this series is all about answering one deceptively tricky question. What do you actually do first when you get into a new HubSpot portal? I've asked a handful of HubSpot pros to come share their real life approaches because no two admins do it exactly the same, and I'm here to learn right alongside of you. This series is also part of something bigger I'm working on. I'm putting together a program called 30 Days of HubSpot, where I'll walk through all the core tools, tips, and tricks based on what people really need to know and use every day in the platform. So these combos help shape the roadmap, and I hope they help you too. Today, I have my friend, the man, the myth, the legend, the human, George B. Thomas.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I feel like and I'm just a guy, but I have been rocking out HubSpot since 2012, and so I guess if I can be human and if I can be a guru or a whatever, I'm down for that. I just love helping humans.
I was last night I was driving home from my parents, and I don't know what reminded me of this, but I just thought about the story you told a few weeks ago about how you were door dashing at one point, and
Yeah,
I was like I was just thinking back on it, and I was like, "I don't know what I would do if I ordered DoorDash," and then, like, I walk out to grab it, and there's George B. Thomas.
yeah. I'm like, hey, here's your beverage. But yeah, listen. Sometimes, like, because I've been working remote since 2013. And sometimes you get sick of the same four walls, and so door dashing for me was a way to go jam the radio, go
Mhm,
drive the roads, and make a little coin on the side just because that's what it is, but,
mhm.
um, yeah, I've often wondered, like, am I gonna see somebody could you for me, like, if you could you imagine being like Gary V brings your DoorDash and you're like, "Wait,
Yeah,
what?" Or he comes to your garage sale, as we've all seen on YouTube. I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, here's this statue, you can have it for free." So, anyway,
yeah. Well, yeah, you can have it for free. I'd be like, "Oh,
yeah,
sure, I guess I'll tip. I guess I'll
yeah,
tip George
maybe
B.
I'll tip
Thomas
my
now."
DoorDash guy today. That's funny.
Well, well, one thing I always like to do in these episodes, George, is I like to ask people why this question is so hard to answer. Um, and why is it something like HubSpot doesn't offer like a checklist or anything like that?
As far
Why
as the
to you is
first
it hard?
thing, like, as far as the first thing that you do in a
Mhm,
portal,
mhm.
well, let's be honest, there's just so many things that you can do.
Mhm,
And also it then also depends upon who you are or, like, what you're in charge of or what strategies you have or what goals you're trying to accomplish. Like, listen, if I'm going in here from, like, a sales perspective, the first thing that I need to do is way different than if I'm coming in here from a marketing perspective. And by the way, if I'm a small to medium sized business versus an enterprise, that's gonna make
mhm,
it different as well. So, like, there are some fundamental things that, I have come to believe that no matter if you're small to medium sized business, enterprise business, sales, marketing, whatever, that you at least need to touch this or these things. But I think it's just a complex conversation, complex question, and as a good marketer would do it, just like the reason it's hard to answer is because it depends.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend, who actually kind of was a little bit of the inspiration for this series, and she called HubSpot one time to ask, and I've had friends all the time come to me, they're like, "Hey, Casey, what's your checklist? Like, can you just give me" can they'll say it, like, so casually. They'll be like, "Can you just send me that checklist that I'm sure you have?" And I'm like, "Oh, here's the thing, I don't."
Yeah,
Because it depends.
the closest thing I have to a checklist is an audit. But that's not really getting, like that's not small. That's like hours, and, like, I don't know if you could checklist that. I mean, I could probably checklist the top, like, 5 top hot topic things that we see over across multiple portals, maybe turn that into checklist, but again, it does change dependent upon what portal we go into.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, you when I asked you to be on the show, you said you were gonna surprise me. I've been waiting ever since that moment. So, George V. Thomas, when you get into a HubSpot portal, what do you do first?
The first thing I do is I go into the settings, I
Uh-huh.
go into properties, I go into
Uh-huh.
the contact property, and I search one little word, persona. And I see if
Ah.
they actually are using the persona tool at all, or if they're using the persona tool in the correct way that it should be used. Because 90% of people that I've seen aren't using it. And the people who are using it incorrectly for the way that it can maximize so many things in your portal, from scoring to conversions to segmentation to communication. And the reason I go there first, Casey, is because fundamentally, if I know that's not being used, or I know it's not being used properly, then there's just some core pieces that follow after that. Even into like, well, if we knew this, we could ask these second smart questions, and if we know those, we could communicate in a deeper way. And if like anyway, that's the first place I like to see, just to get a feel for what they're doing.
That does really surprise me, and it is a good reminder to myself to never invite you to my portal.
That's funny.
Just a little mental note there.
Yeah, that's funny.
Alright, well, so, what's the right way to use it?
Yeah, so listen, here's the thing. Usually when you go in there, well, let's even back up 50,000 foot view. The problem is when you hear people talk about, even HubSpot Academy talk about persona, it's like this book of information. Heck, there's even books that you can get to read about it.
Mhm.
It's that you got to like build this story, and you've got to post it up on in the bathroom wall and the cubicles, and like everybody's got to be able to read it. And the persona is so that you can spin around and create content based on knowing and understanding the roles, goals, and challenges and the demographics. And gee, many Christmas. So one, there is a place in the HubSpot persona tool for you to put roles, goals, challenges, demographics, all of that. But the first thing that I tell people when I'm helping them go through this process is we're not doing any of that. Now, if you happen to know the roles, goals, and challenges from a bullet point list standpoint, we can put those bullet points in there just because. And if you want to build out the persona like the rest of the world is telling you that you should build it out, you can even do that later. Heck, if you want to add a photo to what this person will look like, you can do that later. Other than that, I don't care. There's two things I need you to do.
Mhm.
And so we start out where we talk about positive personas and negative personas. And by the way, that historically, that was the kind of a biggest difference between what HubSpot Academy was preaching and what I was trying to teach people. Is it's basically usually used for just positive personas, people we can help. No, you need to have negative personas as well, which we can dig into. You can circle back around and maybe ask me about negative personas. I can give you an example of how we would leverage this or use this, but having positive personas and negative personas. And so literally in that top bar, I get them to do P dash or N dash for positive or negative personas. And then we come up with usually some type of clever or cute name for who this person might be, right? So if it's like Marketing Mary, if we follow suit with HubSpot, or like Operations Ollie, or something like that. And again, this all changes dependent upon if we're doing like an accounting client, or if we're doing like a automotive manufacturing client, or if we're doing like a SaaS company. Like these names change.
Mhm.
And then here's the big piece that we spend a lot of time on once we figure out what we're going to call them in the tool, is it's the description. And so many times I've gone into portals, it's one is blank, again, not being used, or second, it doesn't start this way. And we start all of our persona descriptions, because by the way, that's the only place that the people using this from the external side of what you're doing will see is that description. And I start all of them out with I'm a, and then whatever it is, right? Small to medium sized business owner looking for help with HubSpot. Enterprise company looking with help for my email and automation. Startup looking for help with my CMS design. Whatever it is, but it all starts with I'm a, because this is a psychological trigger, right? If somebody asks you, "Who are you?" Oh, I'm a dad. I'm a mom. I'm a marketer. What are you doing every time you're answering that? You're saying I'm a. right?
Mhm.
And so when somebody comes to a form, because by the way, we do this in a way that we say we're going to build your personas out. There's going to be positive ones and negative ones, and the description is always going to be positive intent for them to self-identify who they are. Again, even if it's a negative persona, positive intent that they'd be like, "Yep, that's me," and they'd be happy about it, not knowing that they've turned on a whole system for us to remove them from our sales process, remove them from our marketing process, and some other cool stuff that we can talk about. So the idea here is to get those "I'm a" statements in the descriptions, to which then the next phase of this is we talk about, hey, now we're going to get these in all of your forms. Okay. And we're going to put them in your forms in a way where we change the persona label to how would you best describe yourself. Now they do the drop down and they see the "I'm a," and so they can self segmentize. Well, we're going to put them in your forms in a way where if we get that answer once, we never show it again. Because with dependent fields, or queued fields actually in the forms, you cannot have any queued fields, but you can set it as a queued fields. And there's this little line of text that not a lot of HubSpot users read, but it says, if no queued fields, this property will not show up in forms in the future. So
Mhm.
which means you can put it in all of them, ask it once you know it, it never gets shown again because you're using that functionality. Here's
Mhm.
the other piece that we like to teach when it's in a form is now we teach a thing called second smart questions
Mhm.
based on the human and them self-segmentizing themselves through the "I'm a" statement that they can pick. What
Mhm.
are the 1, 2, or 3 questions that you want to ask specific to them? Because now we can use dependent fields to get more qualified answers to questions that we actually care about the type of human that we're serving. So now that floats into, what does that mean? Well, that means we can have a high level list, this persona, or we can
Mhm.
have micro lists. This persona that answered this way, this
Mhm.
persona that answered this way and this way, this persona that answered this way, and this way. Well, what does that mean? That means we literally have a list that could be the trigger for a workflow to an email series that is very specific to the ways that they answered the second smart questions. And now we can make our one to many feel one to one because we have a foundational piece where we let humans tell us who they are as humans. I'll pause there and see where your brain is, how what questions you have. But this is why I start with settings, properties, contacts, persona.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting is because I talked to Chris last week, and Chris hated this question altogether. He, it's really nice when you
Well,
have a guest on that. um, but one thing he didn't was like, obviously, Chris looks way more post sales than you and I do,
yeah,
but I do think the persona piece is important pre and post sale. So it, like we were saying before, like what to do first depends so much on like the business and everything like that. But to your point, personas are applicable any business, any size, and any role, and any
yep,
role of HubSpot also. So just to
yeah.
kind of put that together. Um, just so I'm clear, the I am statement is that that's a text field or is
So in the persona tool, it's literally like a single line text field. But
mhm,
what it
mhm,
creates on the other side, once you have those 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 positive personas, the 1 to 2 negative personas, it takes all of those "I'm a" statements that are these
mhm,
descriptions for the personas, and it puts it in a drop down select feature inside of the forms tool. And so
mhm,
you don't really know that you're building that as you're building the personas unless you go over to forms,
mhm,
drag it in, and then you see, oh, here are all of them together where somebody could select one of them and move forward.
mhm.
But yeah, but you're typing it as in like a single line text in the persona tool.
So the person filling out the form is selecting it from a drop down list
Yes,
though.
the person
Okay,
is
okay.
selecting it from a drop down select on the form. They don't need to type anything in.
Mhm,
Honestly, we
mhm,
don't want them to type anything in
mhm,
because if I circle back to another important reason of why I like to start with the personas is at the end of the day, I want to be able to report on how many humans of what type of positive or negative personas came to a portal or our
Mhm.
website or filled out our forms, started conversations, conversions, down to like, hey, who is the most revenue driving human persona that we're actually helping? And here's another piece too: is one of the things that I love to add into that persona tool is an other. And for the
Mhm.
other, the description, I do something depending on the brand, but for like our brand, we go, wow, comma, I'm none of those, right? And maybe even an exclamation mark. Because then what we can do is if they select that, we can do a dependent field and we can say, well, then how would you best describe yourself? And
Mhm.
honestly, when we were doing this way back in the day and we were doing it at the sales line, it was this piece that made us realize that there are a lot of agencies that were coming and listening to the Hubcast podcast. And also we
Mhm.
realized we had a whole nother set of humans that we could be helping. Now, what I want to unpack and what I hope everybody heard is, wow, you could have a form with a property of other doing persona research for you along the way, because now you can start to see what type of humans are filling out that other field. And is that a thing that we should start to create content around? Is that a product that we need to build and launch? And so for us, we actually created at the sales line agency Adam as a persona over time. So when people would come, we'd get less others, and it would be, marketer or sales or agency owner or employee looking for help for with HubSpot
Mhm.
or to educate around HubSpot. And so again, we were able to learn over time and kind of iterate. And that's the other thing. Persona property shouldn't be set it and forget it.
Mhm.
It should be doing this research. You should be kind of leaning into it and tweaking it. You should be adding or removing things over time. Um,
Mhm.
but it's just again, if you start to nerd out and think about, and this is the biggest reason, the experiences that you can create based on the knowledge of the type of humans that they are that you're interacting with. Because imagine like they select small to medium sized business owner. And one of the second questions might be something like, how do you like to communicate, email or text or whatever? And the other one is might be, how do you like to educate? And it might be video, podcast, or text. Now, if I know somebody likes to communicate in this way, educate in this way, and they are this type of human, I can start to piece some parts of the puzzle together to like, oh, I want to create this type of experience for them. Therefore, this human, I'm going to SMS them
Mhm.
information around podcast show notes to a link to that they can do because they love audio and they like text messages. And boom, now I'm not just thinking in like one direction. I'm able to think in multiple directions based on the human.
You definitely I mean, I definitely didn't think we were gonna talk about personas today. I
Yeah.
definitely didn't. Um, and that was one of
I
my
told
questions
you you'd
was
be surprised.
you
I
were
told
correct. I never doubted you, but I am even more surprised than I thought I was gonna be. Um, and yeah, I was gonna ask about that other property and, of course, revisiting that and everything like that.
Yep.
Do you have any best practices on, like, how many personas?
Yeah, and again, it depends, but when I'm teaching
Mhm,
this and I'm helping people through it, I usually do 3 to 5 positive personas. By the way, it could be
mhm,
2 to 4, and I
mhm,
like to get them to think of 1 to 2 negative personas. And and
mhm,
and that's usually that's the stretch, but when they can stretch their mind into like who they're not a good fit for, because so many times we go to business of like, oh well, we can help everybody. No, no,
mhm,
we have to have specificity. There should be people we can help, and there should be people that we know we're not a good fit for. And so again, 2 to 4, 3 to 5 positive, 1 to 2 negative. And one of the things that I do love, and I'll just kind of lean into this, is the negative personas is where some actual automagical stuff can happen. Where one of the things we were working with a pest control company one time, and
mhm,
so they knew that a negative persona for them was, we called him Apartment Annie. Okay, it could have been Apartment Adam, but at the end of the day, if you're a pest control company and you know
mhm,
that the person to the above you, below you, or to each side of you does not take care of the issue, guess what happens? The issue comes back. And so as
mhm,
a pest control company, they'd be like, yeah, we don't help people in apartment complexes or apartment style housing. And so what they would have is they would have this. I live in an apartment or apartment style dwelling, right?
Mhm.
So it's a positive intent. That's who you are. That's how you're going to self segmentize.
Mhm.
But when they would select that, a couple things would happen. One, immediately they would get a negative lead score that would knock off lead score points from them, right? Because that could
Mhm.
be one of the lead scoring rules that were in place. Two, they would, in about 5 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, they would get an email and explain that they're not a good fit for the company, but here are three DIY ideas. And here are three companies that actually service your type of living. And by the way, if you want to know if you're a good fit for our organization in the future, head over to our Here's Who We Work With page, which,
Mhm.
by the way, educates them on if you're a homeowner and blah, blah, blah. Da, da. And so now we're leaving them with warm fuzzies because we're helping them fix, even though we can't drive revenue. We're
Mhm.
educating them for the future. So when, Adam from B2 and Annie from C3, or I don't know where they live, but if they get together, get married, or whoever, whatever combination, and they actually end in a home and there's a rattlesnake in their backyard, who are they going to call? They're going to call
Mhm.
people that they know they're a good fit for, that left them warm fuzzies, that actually educated them when they couldn't drive revenue. And this was all powered off of you self segmented yourself into a negative persona, and we built a great user experience based on that. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
I mean, thinking of myself, like, I just the other day, someone reached out to me about my 30-day program. They were like, "Hey, I've been using HubSpot for a while. Is this gonna cover, like, more advanced techniques?" And I said, "No." And I was like, "George B. Thomas has a super admin training that you should check out." Like, I mean, to that same effect, I'm like, "No, I'm not the best fit for you,
Yeah.
but here is." So, but having that negative information, and to your point, framing it in a positive way, because if you frame it in a negative way, people aren't gonna select it because they're trying to get through the form.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
They're doing the 00 talk to operator
Yeah,
on that
yeah, yeah.
form.
Human. Human, please. Yes, exactly.
And you do use those personas for email workflows based on the personas?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So
Mhm,
so we'll have, and again, this is, if you're a good HubSpot user, you use folders, and in folders, you then have lists, and so we'll have, like, all marketing Marys, all, Ollie operations, all Adam agency, and then we'll even have sub, kind of lists of, like, what is the best combination of, answered? What is the medium combination of answered? What's kind of like, okay, well, you didn't answer it to the best of what we would usually like to work with. And by the way, that's the other thing is when we do 3 to 5 personas, we try to get people to think of like primary, secondary, tertiary, fourth,
mhm,
and fifth. Because again, if you go to a scoring model, you know that you would give more points to a primary that answered these ways versus a
mhm.
secondary that answered these ways. However, if a primary answered in like not the greatest of way and a secondary in a better way, then you have that fluctuation of the like scoring that you're actually going to give those humans to like elevate that, which by the way, um that could be a whole different conversation of like
And,
fun
like,
stuff that we've done.
some of the primary, like, like, it would be, like, agency individual contributor, agency manager, kind of something like that,
Could
almost?
be. Yeah, it depends, again.
Yeah.
It,
It depends so much, so it's hard to,
yeah.
like
It's like, so for instance, if I give an example, real world example, if I said agency Adam for us,
Mhm,
okay? And the drop down was like I'm an agency owner or employee looking for help for my agency.
mhm,
Some extra questions might be like, are you currently a HubSpot user? If how many hubs are you currently using? How many employees do you have? Like what goals are you trying to reach? Like, so I might literally have those. So dependent upon the way that they answer, no, I don't have HubSpot versus yes, I have HubSpot, or
mhm.
I have these many employees versus that many employees, or like this is the rubrics that I can create to understand like each of these answers could be worth a certain score. And so now I have the persona, I have the answers, and they're giving me this rubrics that I can create of like, And again, it becomes a very flexible and fluid model that you can kind of pay attention to. But don't get hung
Mhm.
up on the mathematics of it all. What I want people to get hung up on is the second smart questions that you should be asking that you might not even
Mhm.
be asking right now, based on you could start it with knowing who that human believes themselves to be. That's the part that I want you to get
Mhm.
hung up on, because based off of that, now, yes, to your question, we have these macro and micro lists that
Mhm.
then can be the trigger for the email flow or flows that we want to send out. And they can be very written one to one, right? So now
Mhm.
imagine this in a world of AI that we live in, because by the way, this is one of the things that AI does really well, personalize at scale.
Mhm.
Imagine being able to say, hey, this is our persona, this is their roles, goals, and challenges. By the way, we want to write this email, and you might give it the original email. But now, if this persona answered these questions in these ways, how could we personalize this email more to them? And
Mhm.
boom, see what it spits out. Of course, you'll humanize it and you'll tweak it and you'll do all the things. But you could literally have 3 to 5 versions of what was the base email, now personalized on the way that they answer the questions. Because, by the way, if they answer a question in a certain way, the lack or extreme challenge that they might be facing to lean into when you're actually creating the email that would go out in these different flows. And so, again, think of it as, how do I use personas to create a choose your own adventure without knowing you just chose your own adventure as the type of emails then and experiences that I'm going to give you moving forward. Because, by the way, we haven't talked about like changing website pages and
Yeah.
stuff based on that. Now we know you're this type of persona, so
Our
we
content, yeah.
images and this copy.
So here's where you blew my mind, George. Um, I have clients often that have 10 different resources in their resource center,
Yep,
and they want to have a different workflow, a different follow-up series based on each of those 10 resources.
yep,
And I'm consistently seeing and telling them it's a lot of work for not a lot of output. And
yeah,
what tends like it tends to be better if you can just send them something more up to date, more timely.
yeah.
However, I I think I mean your strategy makes way more
Well,
George B. Thomas's strategy makes way more sense.
now, but here's where my brain goes, right? If you were using this, you could circle back around and do somewhat of what I think they're asking is like, if
Mhm,
I knew the human, I would
mhm.
actually know which one of the 5, 3, or 2 of the 10 resources to get to the human. Because, like, again, why would it start with platform? Why would it start with product? Why would it start with resource when it should all start with the human?
Yeah, I think often we're talking to the resource. We're not talking to the human.
Yep. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Any final thoughts, George?
Yeah. My final
Lots,
thought is,
lots.
go into settings, go into properties, go into contacts and search persona. And if you're not using the persona tool, if your persona tool isn't have an I'm a statement in the description, if you don't have your persona in all of your forms asking, how would you best describe yourself? If you're in an organization that isn't focused on human first and the type of experiences, communication, and segmentation, it's time to stop and it's time to rethink. Like, what if this was the model? What if we were actually human centric, value first, experience focused organization? What would we change today? That's my final thoughts.
I You've converted me. I'm gonna go set up my personas this
Woo!
weekend. I don't know if I'll do it this weekend, but I'll do
There you go.
it.
I love it. I love it.
I
It'll
think
be a
one of
fun journey.
I think one of my issues with personas historically has been it felt like a lot of showmanship. Um, And I think I need to get past that, and
It's none of that. Like, I want everybody, hopefully the takeaway for people past what I just said is, it is literally the mathematics of segmentation, conversation, communication, like, it all is just based on the fact that that description is a drop down, and then you can expand it out to lists and forms and reporting and, like, the CTAs that show up and don't show up, and like, it just, if you do it right, it fleshes out to so many other HubSpot tools for your base strategies.
mm. All right. That's a wrap on today's HubSpot setup secrets. Huge thanks to George V. Thomas for sharing your go-to moves and behind the scenes thinking. If you told me a month ago, George V. Thomas, 2 months ago, that George V. Thomas and I would just be chatting on a Friday, I would be very surprised. So thank you, George.
You bet.
If you're watching and you're thinking, I wish I had a guide for exactly what to focus on inside HubSpot day to day, that's exactly what I'm building with my 30 Days of HubSpot practical approach course designed for people that want to feel confident in the tool without feeling overwhelmed. And if your persona is too advanced, I'll send you to George for his side strategies, super admin training. I'll drop the sign up link for both in the comments of this event. And thank you. We hope to see you join us. And if you have tips of your own or want to be on a future stream, shoot me a DM. Have a happy Friday, everyone.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, George.